Hey everyone, welcome back to the Safety Gap podcast, where we dive into the innovations and partnerships making communities safer. Today's conversation is all about one of the most fundamental challenges in emergency response: location accuracy. When an emergency happens, first responders need precise, real time information to act quickly. But what if they don't have access to accurate indoor building maps? That's where Critical Response Group, better known as CRG, comes in. Our guest is Mike Rodgers, CEO of CRG, who joins us to talk about how his team, made up of military and public safety experts, is bringing a battle tested mapping technique to schools, businesses, and public spaces to ensure responders know exactly where to go in a crisis. From K through 12 schools to large scale disaster response, CRG's mapping solutions are transforming emergency communication, making it faster, more effective, and ultimately saving lives. If you're a school administrator, first responder, or just someone who cares about safety, this is an episode you won't want to miss. So let's dive in. Karen, how are you doing?
Good morning. I'm good. Good. It's Friday. Really excited about it being Friday today.
And where were you this week?
I was in Florida this week. It was
Of course.
rather humid, but a little bit cooler than the Florida of my past trips this year.
Excellent. Well, glad you're home on a Friday. Looking forward to this conversation. We have Mike Rodgers, CEO of Critical Response Group, better known as CRG. Mike, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. How you doing today?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for taking the time to join us on the show. Let's jump right in. I'd love to understand a little bit more about the origin story of Critical Response Group, what you guys do, et cetera, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So CRG is an emergency mapping company. Origin is kind of based on my background a little bit. So I come from a long family of law enforcement. My dad's a fifth generation police officer. So law enforcement fed the family for 130 years, but after 9/11 decided to pivot off of that profession. Decided to serve in the military, so went to West Point and then graduated West Point and found my way into Army Special Operations as the country was surging in Afghanistan. Deployed half a dozen times, predominantly within that Special Operations world, and was on a team conducting a lot of the night raids throughout Eastern Afghanistan, was introduced to a very specific mapping technique. Transitioned out of that world in 2014-15 timeframe and wanted to take what I learned overseas, and my wife's a school teacher, and I wanted to take it, and I initially applied it to my wife's school. And along that process, very quickly found out that her school floor plans were inaccurate and inaccessible to public safety. And because of the unique access I had into public safety at that time, because of my family, I got a really good understanding of what was in place and what wasn't in place and what the reality on the ground was. And the first thing I did is I reached out to an individual that I served in the military with named Ethan Killeen, who's the co-founder of the company. Interesting enough is that we were actually a leadership team in the 75th Range Regiment together. So kind of the mommy daddy pair from a leadership perspective of taking Rangers overseas. So we had a unique background in multiple deployments together. He had been injured on a deployment in 2011 when we were serving on a thing called Team Merrill. And so he had left the unit. He was at Walter Reed recovering. He was getting his undergrad from Georgetown. He was working at the Pentagon's Special Operations section, and approached him and said, look, I think there's something here. We should try to help. And I said, if you can make these maps, I'll sell the maps. And on a handshake, the business kind of got informally started around 2015-16 timeframe. So very passionate. We always tell people we never started this business to make money. That was never a guiding principle in anything that we've done. It's been a byproduct of being successful and scaling a business appropriately, but that was never really the initial inspiration. It was always to solve a problem based on the lessons that we had from our time in the service.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and your family for your service. That's an incredible story. One thing that you popped out to me is just this, you had this insight in the military around mapping that you then had this aha moment to apply it to, commercial use in your wife's school. What exactly does it do that's different than maybe how it was done traditionally?
Well, it's so fundamental, at least the world I come from. So the technique in the military is called a gridded reference graphic, or a GRG. It's basically a piece of aerial. It's an aerial image of a target location that's gridded out. Kind of looks like a game of Battleship. But then you have all the intersections are labeled, all the houses are labeled, and it serves as the common operating picture overseas. So if a team of Army Rangers and Navy SEALs were going out to conduct a mission that night, we might, we're all going to bring different types of guns and different types of radios and wear different boots, wear different helmets, and have different techniques and tactics, but we all could agree on this simple common operating picture. And it was fundamental, everything that we did. And I was very fortunate, the unit was using that technique when I showed up there. So this is just how I was raised professionally from an operational perspective. And again, knew it to be best practice. So that when I came home to see that that did not exist domestically, it was just kind of, to me, it was almost common sense. Like, how can you possibly operate without one of these? And that's really been the experience that we've had across the country, is we go out there and educate people on the best practice, on the why behind why we do it. Everyone sees it for what it is very quickly, and that's why the take rate's been so high. It's just a unique technique. Then one of the big things is, why we're so passionate about doing it right is war provides this very interesting laboratory to solve complex problems if we listen properly. And as you go back to the Vietnam War, Vietnam taught our country about trauma management. That's where the establishment of the Golden Hour came from, really, which led to the establishment of level 1 trauma centers across the country, all based on the lessons learned on the battlefield. What my generation learned, one of the many things, was how do you communicate and work together in an unfamiliar location under stress and be successful operationally. And this was the most fundamental thing that we use to do that. So we look at really as our responsibility to take this home and make sure it's implemented across public safety nationally.
Yeah, I have a little story about how I met or learned about CRG in your early days, Mike. So you all were out in Colorado and you were doing some training for SWAT teams in the area. And my sergeant, he was a sergeant at the time, now a commander, attended that class. And he came back in to my center and he was like, Karen, I just went to this class and it was great. And they taught us this map. And so he's describing this really powerful map. And he's like, we got to figure this out. And so now, kind of fast forward, it's been really cool to get to know, the founder stories, and see how that is now applied all across the country. And what you're doing is really powerful. So I just wanted to share that cool story of getting to know about you all, even when I was still in 911 and transitioning now, and the relationship that's been built here has been wonderful. And I really do appreciate the service that you and your family have had. And, also that military, the Army attachment that we've talked about with my family.
You're an Army wife too. You get how much harder it is to be the spouse than the actual person doing the thing. So
Karen, why have you? Maybe outline then, how does this type of technology actually work within public safety? Or the value to it?
As Mike was mentioning, that common operating picture, so often when you have field responders that have one view of a map, 911 has a different view, and the school might have a different view. Everybody's trying to talk about how to navigate that location the best way they know possible with the visual that they have. Well, this brings everybody to use a literal common operating picture. You're all looking at the same image, the same markups on that map, the same grid reference. So when you're speaking the location, in grid square B2, then everybody can see that and everyone knows where to go. So the streamline of communication and efficiency with everybody seeing the same thing, talking the same language, it's huge. It's just, honestly, it's invaluable.
So Mike, then where do you find the most success selling this technology? Who needs it the most in terms of kind of the commercial market?
Yeah. So again, to us, it's never been about, making money. It's about solving a problem. So morally and ethically as a company, we focus on K-12. And really, it's just because we want to secure the softer targets. And there's no softer target, in our opinion, than the K-12 space across the country. There has been a tremendous take rate around that. But what we've also seen is that when you go and map the schools, it really inspires the local first responders to take this data in, learn how to use it, because their children go to school there. Their spouses and their family members, they're products of that school. So we focus on that. But really the technique is grown way past that. This week we were doing a tremendous amount of mapping for wildfires throughout the country. We've mapped the Super Bowl, the Indianapolis 500. We've mapped tons of commercial real estate across the country. And again, we're very fortunate with the team we've brought together. It's an extremely mission-oriented team. And although the founders are all coming out of the military special operations community, as you look at how we've grown, the entirety of our sales force today comes out of military special operations. And so we wanted to stay committed to our roots. And, it was a technique that really worked for us. I think that's one of the things that makes us unique. They're the hardest working, most honorable individuals in the world. They're mission driven. I think they would have a hard time working in a lot of other companies. It's kind of the unique culture that we've built here allows this whole thing to work. So we're able to take that credibility, they apply it to K-12 schools, and then it just grows really into all kinds of other, verticals. We're doing lots of energy plants, and we've done tons of places of worship, lots of hotels, lots of hospitals. And really at the end of the day, all that matters is we're creating a very accurate map that's accessible to public safety and the systems that they rely upon today. And I think, as we talked heavily on, the military aspect of our company, the other aspect that's equally as important are the public safety professionals on our team. When we went and did this, again, I come from a family of law enforcement, so I had unique access in the beginning. But as you look at the other founders on our team, they all come out of the community that we were trying to help. And I think that was important in the beginning, where I would say we're a tech company. We kind of look like one today, but we've been built backwards by practitioners. And there's really no egos in the company. So when we brought this technique home, I said, okay, great. We used to operate this way at the tip of the spear within special operations. How do we adjust that to really enable and enhance and advance the response practices of the local first responders? Well, in order to do that, you have to have them on the team to educate you on the problem sets that they deal with every day. So as you look at, the first, the basketball size team around the table, it was all practitioners out of these different worlds that worked together to say, okay, how do we actually solve this problem of creating a common operating picture domestically?
Yeah, and I love this mission. I mean, in meeting some of your sales team, it just hits home. One, they're usually large and intimidating, but two, like the ability to speak credibly, I assume, when they go into a situation about this, because they've largely lived this in their past on either public safety or from the military perspective, which I assume gives a sense of comfort to your customers that you guys know what you're doing. You're the real deal.
Yeah, we do have a certain level of credibility when we walk through the door. We take a tremendous amount of pride in that. And one of the things too is we're always recruiting people, that are currently coming out of the community. So we're learning the best and the best practices. Like I left the service in 2014. It has evolved and changed from a technical perspective and a best practices perspective every 6 months, since I left. So it's important for us that we're always pulling people out that are bringing those things through. And back to the credibility piece, where we're really different in the market is anybody that we compete against, none of them have ever used a map in the real world to solve an emergency. They've never been shot at and had to communicate off of a map. There's some theory of how they think it will be done, but they've not actually done it. So again, that's why we have this reputation of being extremely passionate. And it's just because we actually know what best practice is, because we've all lived it. And so we look at it as our responsibility to bring that home.
So selfishly, my question is, obviously we'll have folks listening to this who understand public safety really well, but we'll also have a few folks listening to this who don't. So I think of myself, and I think my kid's school is right down the road.
Yep.
And I'm 100% confident they've not mapped their school, and certainly probably haven't used your technology. For those listening who are like, yeah, the school should be mapped, this makes a hell of a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Like, what do we do? Like, who do we tell? Like, what's the story that we're trying to explain to a school on the importance of doing this if they haven't done it?
Well, as you look at what's on file for schools today, for the most part, it's an old set of floor plans. Everything from it's on a CD drive, it's rolled up in a binder, it's in an architectural tube. Sometimes the police departments have them. Unfortunately, a lot of times that they don't. But even if it's the latest school that's been emailed around, there's a number of issues that exist with those floor plans today. The first issue is that floor plans are designed in what's called Project or Plan North, which is arbitrary. The cardinal direction is actually identified by the architect or engineer who designs the building. So a byproduct is if you take every school in the state of Nevada, every floor plan is literally rotated in a different direction based on the architect or engineer who designed it. Second issue is the floor plans are all wrong. We have yet to find a single accurate floor plan for any K-12 school anywhere in the country. And then the third issue is that they are not labeled in the vernacular or nomenclature of the structure, meaning if you look at a set of floor plans, it doesn't say where the teacher's lounge is. And with Karen's background, she can attest, she knows this way better than I do, that when someone picks up the phone and calls 911 with a minor medical emergency, they're going to say, I'm having a heart attack in the teacher's lounge. The unfortunate reality is that they're going to speak in the vernacular of the structure, but the person who receives that call for help and the one who responds to provide life-saving services, they do not have a map that says where the teacher's lounge is, which is slowing them down. So what we're really looking to do is just educate everybody on this problem that exists and then help start a conversation between the local first responder community and that institution and kind of bridge the gap and we just want to make sure that your map is on file with that team so they can use it efficiently.
So Karen, over to you. Let's dig into this example that Mike outlined, because I think some people listening to this will be like, wait a minute. Like the 911 operator doesn't know what the student lounge is. So maybe walk through the teacher lounge. So maybe walk through kind of what's typical today in 911 when you get the call from the school versus like what it is or could be with the CRG.
Absolutely. So when that 911 call comes in, we put it into our what's called a CAD system, computer aided dispatch. And I'm typing the location of the school, which may point a little flag on that map, but typically that's going to point towards the front entrance of the school. So as Mike mentioned, if there's a medical emergency happening in the teacher's lounge and the teacher's lounge is not at the front of the building, may have a completely different fire district or a different ambulance company that responds to that back side of the school based on the access point versus the front of the school. And so I put it at the front of the school, and now there's a delay because people are trying to figure out once they get on scene, where do we go? Well, maybe I could have had the right unit there much faster, accessing the right door on the right side of the building to improve that response. And now we have life-saving outcomes that are improved. So now when we put that map on top as the dispatcher sees it, they can give that information to the police, fire, and EMS much faster. Everybody knows where they're going before they're having to park that apparatus. I mean, think about a fire truck who's having to make a U-turn to go around to the back of the building. That is not an easy task. So the better information we could have at the signal of an emergency, then the more effective that response can be, and making sure that the right people are there at the right time.
And one of the big things, just to add on that, there's a recent study that came out that 80% of communication during an emergency is around location. Where are you? Where am I going? Where is north? Where's door 7? And in the military, one of the things we pride ourselves on is the saying that I grew up with is clear and concise is short and nice. Brevity is important. Like, get direct, right to the point. So if I can tell you, instead of having to give you instructions to door 7, I can just say, on the northeastern corner inside grid square J2 is door 7. And you can look at it in half the time and find it. You're going to communicate and navigate in a much more efficient manner, which ultimately saves lives. Everyone knows time saves lives. We just need to simplify how we communicate and navigate. And that's ultimately the intent of the tool.
So if you think about the idea of, by the way, I appreciate that explanation by both of you. You started in schools in K through 12. Roughly, how many schools out there do you think are, I would say, CRG compliant, or however you feel satisfied that this is done the correct way? Are we talking like a third, a half, less?
No, I would not even that many talk public and private schools across the country. We're really in the first inning of this opportunity. I'd say I think 17,000 schools we've mapped as of today across the country. We're mapping in, I think, 42 states actively at the moment, but there's tens of thousands of other schools that are already under contract that we're working through at this moment in time as well. So the largest school district in the country to the smallest school districts in the country, or one school district to schools with well over 1,000 schools. It doesn't matter what it is. That's what we're kind of working on right now. And then we've also done a lot of higher education as well. So lots of universities across the country, community colleges across the country. So, and that's really the interesting thing about it, that the technique is agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's a place of worship or a movie theater or a K-12 building or a community college. Responders potentially are going to have to go there to save a life, and they're going to have to find a specific location after someone gives them instruction. We just want to give them that tool.
And so one thing that comes to mind, if I'm a school district supervisor and I want to do this to my school, the map has to end up somewhere. So I can imagine your map ends up in a variety of different systems, one obviously being ours, Rapid SOS, but there's many others. And so how do you think of that, approach that as a strategy?
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, this kind of comes back to our true understanding of the space and the problem set facing interoperability as it relates to emergency response. And it was the responders on the team from day zero that helped educate us on this problem. This is not a problem that I experienced in the military. We go out with a radio system and we're able to communicate on like channels, and it was very easy to work together. That problem set, Karen can attest to this, is not the way things work domestically. So early on, with the laser focus on let's solve this problem, it all is about data and content, for my opinion. And the only way to create a common operating picture is through the content, and is through your ability to partner and leverage the ecosystem of software platforms that exist today. So as you talk about any deployment that we do, when we map a school, we're first conversation is traditionally with that public safety answering point and say, okay, what technical platforms, what is your CAD? Do you have SOS? And we're uploading the content into that environment. So that PST or that public safety telecommunicator, there's no additional training required to them. This is just a base layer, a digital file that's being presented to them during an emergency. We then kind of follow the bouncing ball to the municipal police department and understand what technical platforms do they have deployed. what CADs, if it's different, what's the CAD system that they're utilizing. We will provide training and policies to make sure the data is being hard uploaded onto the MDTs in the vehicle. We will be giving them instruction to pre-print and pre-stage as a tertiary means to upload there. And then we'll work with that police department and say, okay, who do you rely upon for mutual aid? When the bad thing happens, who are you picking up the phone and saying, I need some help? And then we go to those departments, understand what tech they have and train them. Even though it's not their location, we make sure that they have it as well. And it's an extremely time intensive process. But if you're really focused on solving the problem, the only way to do it is just work through department by department, team by team, and then understand, the real nature of that response. Where does the tactical apparatus, where's the SWAT team coming from? Is it a regional team? Is it a city team? Is it a state team because it's more rural? And then you need to bring it there. And then you go to the county and the surrounding county and the state and the federal partners. So we have a very robust team of implementation experts that are dealing it from a training perspective. They're all former law enforcement. And from a technical perspective, very technical backgrounds that are integrating the content into the environment that exists today. And because of that, I think that's why we've been able to grow so quickly, is it's actually addressing the problem that everyone has. And it's non-threatening. I'm not trying to go in there and sell a system. I'm trying to enhance everyone's system. And the last thing I'll mention is, I believe in order to really increase and enhance public safety, it's all about partnerships, because everyone's creating this really great widget to do this thing. If you're just willing to work with everybody and share the content, we can really advance the ball. But it's through really good partnerships and work with people to say, okay, this is what I do well. That's what you do well. If we put one and one together, we actually equal four in some occasions. So we want to make sure we're finding those right partners and working with them to advance the ball.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. This might be a hot button topic, but as you go through how this integrates into a variety of different organizations and systems, who pays for this? Is it the school? Is it public safety? I think there's some places where maybe the state is now getting involved. Maybe at a macro level, the lay of the land.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a hot topic at all. Traditionally, it's the building owner who is paying for the mapping work to be done. And because we're so efficient in the creation of it, we run it, as you would expect, like a little baby military operation. So we're very efficient on this, which allows us to keep the price very respectable. And as part of that, as part of our terms and conditions, we share that content with the public safety partners and the software providers that support public safety. So if that school contracts us to do that work, we're then going to go to that police department, 911, fire department, and we eat all those integration costs. And the good thing is, now that we've integrated with well over 100 different software providers across the country, like I use, you guys would be the best example for us. When, if I'm doing a school district in the Dallas school district, and then they're using you and it's uploaded in, we already did that integration cost. So when I go to a school district in New Jersey that has SOS, we're just uploading additional data into it. So it's just really the workable hours that it takes to do that, which we've built out a team that's all they do every day.
I love that. That is fairly simple. Now, do you also see states getting involved now and saying, hey, we want to have mapping in every school, as an example?
There are a number of states that have introduced legislation to really establish standards statewide, and in some instances provide appropriations to help the schools put the technique in place. And really their goal legislatively is that they want to create a standard so that, every police officer, I'll use the state of New Jersey as an example. I'm proud, born and raised in New Jersey. I live there today. Every single school, public, private, charter, has been standardized and has been uploaded to every single police officer in the state of New Jersey. So you pick a Jersey trooper driving down the turnpike right now, they can pull out a mobile device or on their CAD or on the intranet in the vehicle, and they have instantaneous access to every single school at their fingertips in a matter of seconds. So there's a number of states that have introduced that. And again, I always tell people, I most certainly never had any intent of starting a business. That was not my plan as I was transitioning out of the military. I most certainly did not think I would be acting as an SME as states are considering what are some best practices for legislation, but we have found ourselves in that situation, and we look at it as our responsibility, just share the lessons that we've learned of what works and what doesn't work. And one of the big things that we always talk about is the requirement to walk the schools. I think from an ethical perspective, if we're going to create a piece of content that could potentially be used to save someone's life, if you're not willing to walk the school, then I don't think you should be in the business. I think that if we're going to give this to a first responder so they can communicate off of it to save a child, it's not about your margins. It's about your ability to walk that structure and execute it properly so that someone can find the appropriate door. Because as we go through, we're walking anywhere between 30 and 40 schools every day across the country. This week we were in, I think, 16 different states walk-in schools just this week alone. And as we're doing that, every school we go to, there's discrepancies on how the structures are labeled. So you actually have to be boots on ground. You have to verify it. So if door 29 is out of order, we catch that on the front end, and they can either adjust that, or at a minimum, we capture it on the map so everyone can still find the appropriate door.
Yeah, I know Karen feels this way, but it has to be amazingly gratifying to know, like, the New Jersey example. You live there. Obviously, you lead the company. It's in every school in the state. I mean, what's that feel like to just be like, your technology's there to, basically keep our kids safe? That's be amazingly gratifying.
Yeah, we're very proud of what we're doing. But again, this is the first inning. We're not stopping at New Jersey. We're taking this technique. This is a national thing. Just like emergency rooms coming home to the country based on the lessons learned in Vietnam, we're making sure we put this in every K-12 school and beyond across the country. So, super gratifying. And one of the things that we do is any new member that joins our team, we had a new member, he's a pararescueman he's in Washington State. He's a Air Force individual, special operations, great human being. First thing that we did when he came on the team is his children are in a school. Well, we mapped that school. And, because everybody really believes in what it is that we're doing here. So we make sure it's not just my children's schools, it's everyone who works here schools are safe.
That's powerful.
How do you, a little bit of a tangent here, and I'll come back. One thing came through my mind, and that is, I love the mission of how you hire folks from public safety and the military for all the reasons you outlined. How do you think about, then I assume you train them for a certain function? Like, for example, maybe the best salesperson is not ex-military. Like, how do you think about that? Or maybe you find just that intersection between great, in this example, salespeople or engineers and, veterans. How do you balance that as a CEO?
Yeah, it's great. We hire great people, and we put that talent to work in appropriate lanes. We have seen that the special operations veterans are really good when trained appropriately to sell. And that's our model. We stay committed to it. It's an ancillary benefit that we're hiring and transitioning people out of the community, which is very important to the leadership team here. But at the same time, they've got that credibility. So I believe I could easily go find a software sales rep who's absolute rock star at their craft and put them to work. And I'm sure they would dominate, but that's just not our model. We go find the person that's got the ethics and moral that we're looking to put to work. And then we bring them in-house and we train them on this skill set. So when they come in, they're the kind of the sweet spot is you get someone who's about 10 years in service, they're starting a family, and we transition them out and we teach them internally so they have, no bad habits. A great saying is, if you don't want a rotten apple, get it right off the tree. And we do that here. And that's how we pick the sales reps. As you look at the technical aspect of the team, it is the polar opposite type of human being that we're looking for from a technical aspect of it. In the beginning, we were hiring veterans and law enforcement professionals to go and build the mapping data, and that was not a winning recipe for us. I'll be honest. Can you imagine Dennis Sims sitting there making maps? Karen, it'd be challenging for Dennis. Not his fault. And if you know Dennis, I love him. He's a brother, but it just wasn't the correct person for that type of workload. And Dennis does all our training, and he's an absolute rock star of a human being, obviously in jest, but it's a very younger workforce that we have that's actually building the mapping data, who's still inspired by the same mission, but they're coming to the team with different skill sets. And on that example, when we hire them out, usually the institutions and universities that are around our office, they come into our own training program. And again, we're looking for more of a personality and a characteristic and a work ethic that we're going to train into our system. And I think that's how we've been able to scale the company so quickly, is we've built a lot of proprietary systems. And if anyone's met Ethan Killeen, who's the co-founder of the company, he's a very systems-oriented person. So when you come into our team, you learn our methodology of how we build a map, but most importantly, why we build a map and how important it is to get it right the first time. So they come in that example through a 4-week training program that we've built from the bottom up. And we can mint someone with minimal mapping experience to a cartographer in less than 4 weeks. And they kind of go through the process, and now they go to a production team and they're producing great things. So it's a different type of person we're looking, but it's more on personalities than past work experience. We'll teach you how to be successful.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. A question on the mapping, just to kind of close the loop on that. How long would it take to map a medium-sized school? Is this something that takes weeks, days, hours?
There's a tremendous not tremendous, but a decent backlog in terms of work that we have signed that we're going through right now. So it's about 90 days, a little less, like 78 days from contract to completion of, from us receiving that purchase order to being totally disseminated into the public safety systems. But we can go faster. Let's say there's something that's important and we need to map out by tomorrow. We could map that school as long as we've walked it prior to. So it's just a matter of how we prioritize when things come in and when they go out based on the needs of that location.
Yeah, it sounds super efficient, actually.
Well, like when we did the wildfires the other day, those maps were out in about 35 minutes. So we get a call.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Wow. 35 minutes to do wildfires.
Yep.
Impressive.
I think that really is powerful too. Like you're doing K through 12 and you're doing places of worship and all of these other buildings, but there's a lot of work that you do with natural disasters too.
Mm-hmm. We do.
Do
We do a tremendous amount of that work. Yeah. So, all the hurricanes that were, the tragedies that were hitting Florida and other parts of the country, we're providing mapping services for there. And usually it's someone knows of our service because we've mapped all the schools in the region. And now they've got this emergency coming. They need a very quick reactive map that they can use in the field. And we'll go and just support them through those efforts. Or we've had, prisoner goes missing and there's a large search that's underway. We'll get a call and we're creating a map. And that's a very important time sensitive map. And because that's the way it worked in the military, it was all time sensitive opportunities to go execute an operation. We learned the ability to create these things very quickly, and we kind of carried a lot of that through to our business practices today.
Yeah, thinking about the hurricanes and things that were happening, these neighborhoods were completely gone. There was no house, there was no address. And so, it was really critical to then see the before and the afters, I'm sure, and being able to plot that accurate location from people who are calling and sending those search and rescue teams to that precise area within a grid square, and how that communication happened, I'm sure was really quite interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of the sheriff's departments down in Florida, and they're extremely progressive down there. They do a tremendous job, but they were using it to just kind of track the different flooding. Okay, this road's now closed. And using it as the base that they were communicating off of that, because everyone was on the same piece of paper. You could say, okay, this intersection here and here is now closed. We have to use this route. So we're very proud as a company to be able to support first responders through those challenging times.
Yeah, those are really good examples. And I was going to ask you, Mike, like I find obviously in every mission-driven company, there's these stories of success that kind of like are the ones that you just find, like the ones you always tell to your friends and family and stuff. I'm curious if you have any of those. Are you willing to share? Or just like, I'm sure there's a lot, but are there a few that kind of pull at your heartstrings?
There's tons, but there's not really any that we share more than others. We're just extremely proud to be taking something that we learned and applying it home. And we're very proud of the team that we've built. You take everybody with their past experiences and how do we create an environment and a culture to let this thing thrive. I would say that's what I've been most proud to be a part of. And that's as my position changes in the company. That's something I work with every day is, I was the first salesperson on a team and I still do it. I still probably do 3-4 sales presentations every day, but my role has fundamentally changed as this is kind of be the steward driving the company forward and hiring great talent and kind of managing, instead of thinking about what are we doing today, it's what are we doing in 18 months. So take a lot of pride in having part of that.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned you're kind of in the first inning and there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
But as you look forward, in addition to kind of just getting every school and building and community kind of mapped, anything else on the horizon in terms of like where you envision this being in 3 to 5 years? Is it maybe an advancement in technology, or is it just making sure the technology we have today is pervasive across the country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple things here. We're going to run multiple things on multiple tracks at the same time, right? So it's about staying laser focused and solving the problem that we set forward on solving. You go to some of the states that we've not had an opportunity to get work into, those locations still need to be mapped, and we need to be putting as much effort and time and resource into that as humanly possible to accomplish the goal there. It's about expanding the footprint, which we're already doing at a very rapid rate, into other verticals other than just K-12. It's about providing our mapping data in other file formats. So we've launched a whole new wing of the company that does nothing but creating some of the more technical GIS files. So this, some of the 911 communities want that. We've now got a very robust capability to transfer the work that we've already previously built, or as we're selling that as just, it's part of our everything that we do all day, every day. And I think as we grow, we're just a mapping company. So it doesn't matter how you want to receive your map. That's just part of our overall offering. Now we've been able to bake that all together. And then one of the last things from a technical perspective is because we're walking so many structures and putting boots on the ground. We're also verifying the Z value per floor of every structure that we're going through. So as you look at, as the public safety continues to evolve, most importantly, it has the tools to be able to visualize that X, Y, and Z, both lipswood and height above terrain. We want to be, having all the data that everyone can rely upon to do that in part. And as you look at, ultimately in the future, as everyone continues to want to try to drive towards 3D models, I'm a big believer that we can't solve the 3D problem until we solve the 2D model first. And we're solving the 2D model plus the attributes of the Z properties associated with the building. That's what's going to be the guts, kind of the inside of the layer cake for all those 3D models downstream. So we're already doing that work. It's just a matter of, partnering with the correct partners that can visualize that data, like Rapid SOS. So now that when that 911 caller comes in and it says, okay, this is the X and Y, and that they're at 113 feet in the air, we've already walked that structure and correlated that 113 feet actually equals the 12th floor of the structure. And we need to get to the point where it doesn't say this is the X, Y, and Z. It says, okay, that person's calling from the conference room on the 12th floor. We have to have the raw data, and it just takes a lot of work to get there. So continue to build those libraries and those databases to support the industry as it moves forward.
Yeah, so Z-axis seems to be a hot topic, and what you've just outlined, if I understand this correctly, is completely doable with your technology.
Yeah, we've been doing it for the last couple of years.
That's crazy. That's amazing. Impressive. Yeah. All right, I want to be mindful of time. I'm going to turn this over to Karen. Karen, any last thoughts? Like what should public safety know about this if they're not aware of this capability? What should they be thinking about themselves? What should they be talking to the community about, et cetera? Any kind of takeaways for those listening?
Yeah, I think from the public safety community, that there's a challenge in visualizing the location and ensuring that you have the right mapped information for a facility. And so when you identify that safety gap, and I would just encourage you all to go out and, ask your partners, talk dispatch, talk to law enforcement, talk to fire, everybody come together and talk about, what do we all have access to and what do we not have access to? And if we don't have that really important indoor map that has been human verified, I think is just another critical piece that, maybe it isn't always there. And so then what do? Let's take steps together to move forward, to engage with the school district, to engage with our stakeholders and go get those schools mapped. And now let's make sure that it gets put into all of our systems so that when emergencies happen, we know exactly what to do. Let's train together. Right. And let's understand how to speak the language together so that when a time comes that there is an emergency, and it could be any kind of an emergency, it could be something that's coming into the school from the exterior of the building. But, being able to partner together. And then I'll just give an example. I'm a parent who was formerly in public safety and is now serving the community from the private sector. Our school district had a safety night last night. And so it is my duty as a parent to attend that and understand what's happening at those schools and introducing myself and having a conversation to understand what are the expectations at this school when an emergency happens, and do you have a map? And yes, I asked that question. Mike will talk later. So, all of us in public safety also are, many of us are parents, or you might have a friend's kids in those schools. Ask the questions and make those introductions, do the outreach, because our kids' lives are at stake, right? And in order for them to feel psychologically safe in order to learn, physical safety is now that first entry point. And so anything that we can do as a public safety community to ensure that we have all of the right information to respond to a situation at those schools, like this is a no-brainer. Like, take action, do it today.
Yeah, Karen, I love that you do that. And being in this market for maybe a year, I find when I talk to other parents, 19 out of 20, 99 out of 100 do not know what technology there is in their school and how it works. So I encourage every parent to ask that question to your school board, your principal, your kids. Ask them if they know and kind of how they're drilled, and they'll give you very insightful answers. Mike, last question to you. Anything that we didn't talk about that you'd love to bring up, and how do people get a hold of you and CRG when they hear this and want to map their building?
No, first, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to kind of tell our story today. We love the story and we love telling people about it. We love our partnership with you guys. You've been longtime partners of ours, so it's something we take a great deal of pride in, is our relationship with you guys. So I want to thank you for that, Karen, especially you. Just known you, you've been wonderful for many years. just thank you. Really, there's nothing else I was looking to put out.
Yeah, well, thank you as well. I mean, the partnership's been wonderful, and I know everybody appreciates your team and you and the work that you do. So thank you as well.
Thanks
Very
appreciate it.
much.
All right.
Great.
And thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to The Safety Gap. If you enjoyed the episode, leave a review, subscribe, and share with others who care about building safer communities. To learn more about Rapid SOS and our mission, visit us at rapidsos.com. Until next time, stay safe and take care.